or ourselves as we truly are, or we have the proposition of God. What are the implications of this, very quickly?
5 minutes.
What are the implications of a universe of brute factuality? Well, first, we're prisoners of an impersonal blind forces. We are essentially atomically determined. We're imprisoned in an isolated, meaningless array of endless, mindless events. How is it possible then to make value judgments? We can say one thing differs from another, but how can we say one thing is more right or more true than another? We just have the historical moment. What are the moral implications of holding this? Jean-Paul Sartre again said, "Indeed, everything is permissible if God does not exist, and as a result, man is forlorn because neither within him nor without him does he find anything to cling to. If existence really does precede essence," that's prior to an ordained structure or pattern, "there is no explaining things away by reference to a fixed given human nature. If God does not exist, we find no values or commands to turn to legitimize our conduct." In other words, we have ethical subjectivism and ethical relativism. Morality becomes based purely on feeling or upon my historical situation, and might be changed or updated from 1 week, 1 month, one culture to the next. Some might say, well, we can anchor ethics in some kind of evolutionary paradigm. But how is this possible? How do you get an ethical ought from a biological is? How can you derive ethics from biology and chemistry? You only have biology and chemistry. We judge our biological instincts according to a moral intuition. We say that that instinct should not be explored, or that desire should not be explored because it is wrong. How is it possible to morally evaluate anything, tyrants, oppression, prejudice, or anything else, without God? How can we have moral improvement if morality is subjective and relative? If we're just matter in motion, if you're just slime that evolved rationality, how can we say that it's objectively evil to even abuse children, or murder, or any other crime? What about rationality? You see, we're talking about two types of explanation. One explanation tonight is offering the impersonal, the other is offering a personal explanation. Isaac Newton in Principia wrote, "A heavenly master governs all the world as sovereign of the universe." The theistic view of knowledge is that the universe is created by God according to a specific plan, and our minds have been constituted in such a way that we can understand it. But if your mind is a product of undirected, naturalistic evolutionary processes, why should you trust it? Charles Darwin, in a letter in July 3rd, 1811, said, "With me the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which is developed from the mind of lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust in the conviction of a monkey's mind if there are any convictions in such a mind?" How do you arrive at the validity of your reasoning process? What gives you warrant? What justifies your confidence in reason or rationality? Without God, why should you trust your mind? There's only three possibilities for validating reason. The first is an appeal to the sub-rational. That's like asking your cat to check your university dissertation. The second appeal might be to reason itself. Let's use a reasoned argument to justify reason, which of course begs the question. The only other possibility is a super-rational appeal to God. That God justifies our use of reason. And thought itself, see this piece of paper here?
1 minute.
Is thought simply biological and chemical? I mean, if you broke down the chemical constituents of this piece of paper, have you plumbed the depths of the meaning of my words? Do thoughts have extension in space? Do laws have extension in space? If your mind is simply neurotransmitters firing, then this debate tonight is like 2 cans of Coke being shaken and pop the lids, and whichever one fizzes most wins the debate. Dr. de Sousa's brain fires in one direction, mine fires in another, yours fires in another. There is no right or wrong conclusion. There is just determinism. There is just the way your chemicals have shaken down and the way mine has shaken down. What about your identity over time? Did you know that every 7 years, every atom in your body has been replaced? Are you the same person you were 7 years ago? If we're just matter in motion and all is flux, what is the basis for individual and personal identity? If you're just a chaotic array of atoms, a statistical anomaly in the chaos, as Bertrand Russell put it, what is the basis for personal identity? And finally, this debate itself tonight. How can we have right and wrong inferences, laws of thought in a materialist, atheistic universe? How can we say that one inference is right and one inference is wrong without a universal standard to judge? How is it possible to have immaterial, invariant laws of thought in a materialist worldview without God? Now, I hold that the very idea of God, the very being of God, is a necessary precondition to make my experience intelligible. Otherwise, I am adrift and afloat in a chaos, an ocean, a bubble on an ocean of nothingness with no ability to know anything or have any values at all. Thank you.
I thank the member for his remarks. I now call upon Dr. Ronald de Sousa to open the case for side opposition in an address not to exceed 20 minutes. Hear, hear.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm very honored to be invited here tonight, and I want to start with a confession. The confession is that, to me, the things that Joe believes are not just false, they're just completely incredible, and have been so ever since I was about 15 years old and decided that I should actually think about the question of God seriously. Now, I'm aware that his whole argument has been, and I'm not going to comment on this part of the proceedings on his argument, but his whole argument has been that it is inconceivable for him that I should believe what I believe. And I think that there is something deeply puzzling about this situation, because I know perfectly well that there are a number of very, very smart people who believe in God, and indeed that nearly everybody in history has believed in some form of supernatural beings. So where do I get off disagree? Well, I'm not the first or the only one. There have also always been people, from Xenophanes, the Greek philosopher, who pointed out, making fun of religion, that if cows had gods, they would look like cows, and so on, to Lucretius, who had a sophisticated form of atomism and also made fun of all kinds of superstitions and religions, to Hume, who pretty much exploded all the standard arguments in favor of the existence of God, as God is commonly conceived by most believing people in the world. I mean people in the Judeo-Christian tradition, Islam, Jews, and most Christians, in particular Catholics, have very specific beliefs about God. They're very different from some sort of vague deist belief. And the deist belief is simply that there was some sort of origin to the universe, and that that origin must have been an intelligent one, and not one that you can simply think of as being due to chance and some sort of natural necessity. So now, having made this confession about the strangeness of this debate, which also implies that I firmly believe though I don't have any concrete evidence for this, that almost